Hey, what's going on, guys? B Flatten here with a brand new video today. Today we're going over the version 3.0 of Malicious Melee Amara. We have done 1.0, we have done 2.0, and now with the purple tree out and released for this build, we get to do version 3.0 for Malicious Melee Amara. It got better. Let's go over the skill trees, shall we? So personal space and root to rise. This is just to move down the tree. Personal space is not going to work with the Facepuncher, unfortunately, which is our main portion of damage. However, it is going to work if we're going to be doing things like fight for our life in case we are in danger. It's a lot better than clarity anyways, and root to rise is kind of mediocre. So if we're going to have anything, we might as well have a fight for our life style skill with our free radical. Arms deal is extremely important, and also find your center. Arms deal is going to be dipping into a lot of our different skills in the skill trees, and we're going to be talking about this a little bit and coming back to it. So hang on to arms deal and put it to the back of your mind. This is a very important skill. And find your center, melee by 100%, extra damage, and the range is increased by 75%. Very, very good. Steady hands, we don't need any points in anima. Steady hands is for weapon handling and accuracy for our Facepuncher, so all of our pellets can hit a lot easier. Infusion at 5, it doesn't matter if we have this at 1, if we have this at 5. It's a lot better than having points to anima. The purpose of having at least 1 in here is so that we have some elemental damage coming over and crossing over. Wildfire for 4, this was just to move down the tree. However, it does spread status effects, and it does work with one of our purple skills. We'll come back to that a little bit later and show you that interaction. Illuminated Fist for 1. Unfortunately, there is no longer the possibility of having a Musecom with 3 Illuminated Fist. So if you're downloading this build, you will get a 3 Illuminated Fist. If you can't download this build, Illuminated Fist can only come with +1 in the skill tree now. So you can get a 2 out of 1. Still really, really good and solid, though. Tempest for 5 out of 5 because we're doing elemental splash damage at some point. Dread is really, really good with this build because we're using Ties That Bind, and it can actually work and instantly reload our Facepuncher. The more that you're shooting the Facepuncher, the more that you're surviving. The more that you're surviving, the more that you're killing. Deep Well, Mag Size, it's going to be really, really good for our free radical. And unfortunately, I don't believe this is going to work with Infusion with the Facepuncher. It has to be originally elemental. 1 point to sustainment because we're doing millions upon millions of elemental damage regardless. Anything more is a waste of points. 3 points into fast hands for reload speed. Again, the more that we're firing our Facepuncher, the more that we're surviving, so more reload is nice. Tapestry and Do Harm just to move down the tree. 3 points into Restless just for action skill cooldown rate. And finally, our purple tree. Heavy Rain, more splash damage. This is going into arms deal. We talked about that a little bit earlier. No Mistakes in Nature. Whenever Amara inflicts a status effect on an enemy, you get increased melee damage by 65% for 12 seconds. Now, this is going to work with Wildfire to spread more status effects. Ebb and Flow, just to move down the tree a little bit further. If you get an enemy killed with melee, you get some health back. It doesn't really matter because sustainment takes over anyways. Unweave the Rainbow is super important for this build. Amara deals bonus damage of her attuned element whenever she deals melee damage or splash damage to frozen enemies. Now, this build is all about freezing enemies. We're going to be doing it very, very often. And this is a ×31 Mayhem scaled skill. And all we're doing for this build is melee and splash damage. So it is a very good skill for this build. Killing an enemy with melee attack has a chance to reset your action skill, which is great. Whenever you activate your action skill, you get 70% melee damage. Burn both ends. After activating your action skill, you get threat, drawing the attention of enemies. Whenever you are dealt damage by an enemy, you get increased damage for a short time, and it stacks. Free the Soul is actually a great skill. It is Mayhem scaled. It's not going to be like super noticeable, but it is a Mayhem scaled skill, and 1 point is great. Whenever Amara kills a frozen enemy, the splinters will fly out and home to nearby enemies, dealing cryo damage. It has a 3-second cooldown. And probably the best skill in this entire goddamn skill tree, Body and Mind. Amara's melee attacks deal bonus splash damage for a short time for 12 seconds. Now, if you kill an enemy in that 12-second duration, you reset it back up to 12 seconds, and then it starts to tick down from 12 seconds again. Now, it's bonus splash damage, and it's all your melee attacks after a kill skill. which is increased by heavy rain, which is increased by arms deal, which is increased by any form of splash damage that you have for passives at all. It's very, very good. And then clear the mind for 1 point as well. After killing an enemy, you ignore elemental damage resistance. So if you have shock on corrosive, does not matter. That just counts as normal damage. It does not affect immunity. So you can't do, say, radiation on Dr. Benedict. Or you can't do shock on kilovolts. But you can do like shock on corrosive shields. That would work. Amara's augments are not the greatest, unfortunately. The only augments that are actually going to be useful for this is either going to be Cold-Hearted, Soulfire, Light Tiger, or just having no element on it all, and you will have it converted to shock instead. Soul Sap is probably going to be one of your better choices for your second augment, just because nothing else really works with this. Unfortunately, Expedite is still broken, so there's no point in putting that on. Allure doesn't really do anything. It's actually just going to fuck you over even more. And everything else has negative damage. So Allure is probably your second best choice, but Soul Sap is your only actual choice. Tie-Side Bind is just going to be doing everything for you anyways. Let's go ahead and show you this build. So the gear that we're going to be doing is Facepunchers. We're doing 150, 90 in action skill and melee. Free Radical is going to be our fight for a life weapon. Activated an action skill will Frozen Heart Nova all of our enemies. The Muse is going to be our melee damage source. Icebreaker Victory Rush, so whenever we freeze an enemy, we do increase damage to frozen targets. Now that the Victory Rush is fixed, this is actually going to be insane damage with all of it together. It is V2 damage as well, which is multiplicative. If you know what V2 is, it is a very, very good item to throw into the formula for damage. And then finally, a double link fish slap, which is probably going to be the best form of fish slap to use for mobbing. It is cryo as well, because we do a lot of cryo damage. Let's go ahead and show this build in action. What you do is you pick up an enemy, you freeze all enemies around you, you shoot one, everything dies. And then that's when we have all of our nukes going off because of body and mind. Now you're probably wondering why there's like a big splash and like wave of splashes going in on the enemy whenever I shoot one. The reason, I get this question a lot, the reason is because the Facepuncher has a ×14. The ×14 is actually going to be necessary for this specific build. The reason why is because the 14 pellets is counting as 14 individual melee attacks. 14 individual melee attacks means that Body and Mind is going to proc 14 different times because you're doing 14 melee attacks. So it'll do 14 individual splashes on the enemy of your attuned element. It'll do splash damage, it'll do melee damage, it'll do ×31 mayhem scaling. It's fucking stupid. But yeah, 14 individual melee attacks is how that's working. And yeah, it's really, really good. The other thing to keep in mind again is it's going to be increased by anything splash passive. So arms deal like we were talking about earlier, and also heavy rain in the purple tree, along with any splash damage passives will work with it. And the higher mayhem that you're on, the more damage it's going to be scaling up to. So it is very, very good. That's the other reason where Steady Hands comes in. The accuracy will make it so that the reticle of your Facepuncher is a lot like smaller. So it'll make it so that like all those 14 pellets are going to hit, because you want all those 14 pellets to hit. You want to be able to just hit an enemy and it'll just one-shot them. Hit an enemy, it one-shots them. That thing hit an enemy, one-shots them. The longer that you're going with your Facepuncher being reloaded and actually firing, the longer you're going to be alive for. So you want to make sure that you use your action skill as much as possible, because you'll have the opportunity for Dread to take over and reload the weapon for you. Now, we do have Clear the Mind as well, so you can ignore elemental resistance. However, you do have the option of having all 4 different elements in here besides radiation. to choose from if you want to just element match anyways to do even more damage for whatever reason you would like to. The cryo is going to be a really good choice, and the shock is also going to be a good choice as well because of Tempest. If you're ever going in fight for your life, the free radical is going to be your choice to try to revive yourself. It does have URAD, and URAD does work in fight for your life, so you do have a higher opportunity to get out of fight for your life. Other things that you can use with this build though is things like static charges so that you can chain. You can do white elephants for bossing for crits. You can do knife drain if you don't feel like having sustainment. You have different forms of stones in here, so you can do even more elements. There's a radiation stone in case you want to do all forms of elemental damage. The options for this are practically endless. And with it including the purple tree now, where version 2.0 and 1.0 did not have the purple tree, the options are just more expanded. And that's what I mean right there. You shoot into Facepuncher, that's how you live. You don't shoot the Facepuncher, you don't live. Always shoot the Facepuncher. A lot of people have said since the Facepuncher took that hit, took that nerf, that it's practically useless now. I would still argue it is absolutely amazing in shreds on melee builds. Fish Slap just does fish slap related things. You'll pretty much one-shot most bosses. If you don't, a second fish will do it for you. This build can do all forms of content in the game as well. It has been tested for Malawan and Guardian takedown on true takedowns. And there's a lot of different forms that you can run this build. A lot of it runs with augments, and a lot of it runs with artifacts. It really depends on what element of augment you want to choose, and it really depends on what artifact you want to choose for mobbing or bossing. It has a lot of different setups, and it has a lot of different versions of being able to clear content of the game with ease. I think that's going to do it all for everything here. There's nothing else to really mention. There's no guardian trees that are going to be doing any interactions with this. Other than that, I think that's about it. The Muse column, I didn't really go over it a little bit earlier. Whenever you would damage an enemy with a melee attack, and you have 14 different melee attacks with your Facepuncher, remember? It also works with your Fish Slap. You have a melee ball that grows out, kind of like Remnant, and it goes with the tuned element towards the nearest enemy. It has a short cooldown of, I believe, 6 seconds. This thing is really good to have. It can't come with 3 illuminated fists anymore, unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier. It can only come in 1. The ideal roles now will be having Laid Bear, because enemies take increased damage from all sources for a few seconds after being damaged by the action skill. This will work with melee. So make sure you have as much Laid Bear and that one pointed to Illuminated Fist. Very important to have. Other than that though, guys, I hope you enjoyed the build. It is in Discord as of right now, as of the upload of this video. My name is B Platin, guys, and I'm signing on out of here. Take care all. Laters.